Perfect. My name is Erik Argudelo. That's not my full name because, in South America, we have very long names, but that's a short version. I was born in Venezuela and I moved to Ireland about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And so when did you come to Ireland and why? And what was the story behind you leaving Venezuela?
The exact year, I don't know. One day I need to sit down and try to figure that out. I think it was around 2000, 2001. So roughly 20 years ago. What age I was, again, I need to sit down and try to figure out. I must have been 19 at the time, or just about turning 20. I'm 42 now. So yeah, I must have been 2021, I guess. I came to Ireland for a couple of reasons, but primarily is that I wanted to leave Venezuela because I felt that my personal circumstances when I was living there were not going to end up well. I was recently diagnosed HIV positive. So I was like 19 probably when I was diagnosed HIV positive, and then I spent about 5 months trying to get tested. The health system back then, this is 20 years ago, had already pretty much collapsed, and it was very difficult. The only way I could manage to get a test was literally by bribing a private institution, a private sort of a clinic. So on top of paying the fee, because, in Venezuela, healthcare is supposed to be free, but, that's a joke. And then I went to the private sector, but not even the private sector. They wanted to do these kind of tests. And part of the reason is that, as I said, the whole ecosystem, the whole health system, political, so on and so forth, had deteriorated. And the only way I could find a place to get it done was by actually bribing the person at the clinic, and she ended up doing the tests. I got the confirmation that was positive, and that was just a bit of a kick in the butt for me to decide to leave, because on top of all that I described, that was sort of 90s and start of the noughties. I think technically it's supposed to be the peak of the AIDS epidemic, but also personally, I saw people, well, I didn't see them, but these were friends who actually died of AIDS-related illnesses at that time in my life, when I received my diagnosis. And I was like, okay, this is not happening to me. I know that there are places where treatment exists. I know there are places where they do take care of people with HIV. That's one of the main reasons I decided to leave Venezuela and come to Ireland.
Mm-hmm. And why did you choose Ireland?
I didn't know much about the world. I was very young, and in Venezuela, we tend not to travel too much for many different reasons. I was doing a bit of research. I wanted to go somewhere where I could speak English. I did not want to go to the States. I had my mind set in Europe, and then I read something, and I'm sure I got confused with the two Marys in Ireland. Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese. But there was something I read about them that there was also a piece of legislation that had passed in Ireland not long before I came here, pushed by Senator, oh my God, what's his name? That he challenged the right to privacy. He actually got homosexuality decriminalized.
David Norris.
Yeah, Senator Norris, yeah, that's what it was. So there was something, as I said, to do with the two Marys and Senator Norris. Then idea got into my head, and then I decided, sure, let's give it a go, and that's why I decided to come here.
So you arrived to Ireland as an asylum seeker, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I arrived at the airport, so I was just a person, but after walking out of the airport, the first thing, not necessarily the first thing, but one of the very few first things that I did was I went to the, I think it's called the Immigration Bureau office, and then I explicitly said that I wanted to apply for asylum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how long did that process take, and how long were you going through the system itself?
Well, many people tell me that I was lucky. For me, it took 1 year. So from the moment that a person, let's say me in this case, and again, this is 20 years ago, so I don't know how things may have changed, but from the moment you go and you say that, let's say Erik goes and says that he wants to be apply for asylum, there is a period, you get the forms, you need to complete them, and let's say everything is done in a couple of days. Then what happens is you need to just sit and wait, and you need to wait until there is a decision being made, and the decision has been made by the Minister of I'm not sure if it is the Minister of Interior or something like this.
Minister for Justice, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yes, for justice, yeah. And then, but that process can take up to 3 years for some people. In my case, it took 1. And in this period, I didn't have much to do. I was living in this system, direct provision. Mm-hmm. And what I decided to do was I went to a support sort of group organization. At the time, it was called Sperasi. I'm not sure if it still exists. And then I started studying English, and I started to volunteer as well. So I was actually working there as a volunteer, a couple of hours every day, just to get me, something to do, because direct provision is a soul killer, because there's literally nothing to do. And then I heard that it has changed, but back then the only thing that could get me going was actually going to this center and try to do something, and that's why I was working there as a volunteer. But yeah, it took 1 year, and it was quite fast. So a lot of people say to me,
yes, because you do hear of people in direct provision for many years. Yeah. And so you left direct provision then, and how long until you became Irish? You became an Irish citizen?
I read somewhere, because in this process of application, I was like devouring every single piece of legal document that I could put my hands on. I guess one of the reasons as well I was successful in my application the first time around was that I got access to quite a lot of international sort of release documents about the situation in Venezuela. And they were also focusing on the situation of LGBT people, so on and so forth. At the time, they didn't mention HIV. I suppose there was no data about it. But anyway, I put all that together, and I was reading quite a lot. And in reading all of this, I got acquainted with some pieces of law and whatever. Anyhow, the point is that I did hear, and this was repeated to me as well, that after 5 years, anyone has the right to apply for citizenship. This is a sort of almost international law. And I say almost because I know that in Poland, for example, it's 7 years. But yeah, Polish are special. And then I applied literally just a few days when I calculated. I've been here 5 years, and then I did my calculations, and I gave myself an extra month. And then I went and I did all the paperwork. And I did it myself. I didn't even get a lawyer. I just completed the forms and sent them in.
Mm. And so I wanted to ask as well about, I guess, how you feel about Irish people like to pride ourselves on being a very welcoming nation and so on, and all that kind of stuff. But where this idea of kind of acceptance fit into your experience at that time? And did you feel accepted in Ireland, both as someone who had to leave for their own safety and as someone who had to leave in part connected to their own sexuality?
Well, I mean, I do always say that Irish people are very accepting and friendly and welcoming and so on and so forth. That's not to say that there's no racism. I think racism, unfortunately, is present everywhere, just different levels and expresses in different ways. But I have to say that when it came to my sexuality, even though, yes, I used to go to the George and I was younger, so I probably was a bit a little camper and happier, but I try to keep it. That was not something that I was saying to everyone. I mean, if somebody asked me, probably I would say yes. Although sometimes I found myself lying about that, or avoiding the subject because I was afraid. I didn't know. I was new in the culture and I didn't know how acceptable it was to talk about these things. So yeah, part first is that even though I tried to be open, I was not disclosing this information about myself, going around saying, "Oh, I'm gay and I'm proud." This is 20 years ago, and I was 19 at the time, very young as well, or 20. And the second thing is for sure, when it came to HIV, that was not something that I was not saying to anyone, except to if I was dating a person and a guy. And in fact, even at the time, I know it was a mistake or whatever, but I was not saying it at the start. I was just first hoping that they will kind of that we will build a sort of a emotional relationship, and then sharing that information about me. So, but in general, the partners that I had, few of them Irish, majority of them Irish, all of them Irish, with exception of one person, Polish. They were all accepting of the situation, so no major drama in there. So yeah.
And do you think that there's still a lot of work in terms of broader Irish society in terms of fighting HIV stigma? And I guess, do you feel like there's a lot of ignorance around HIV in Ireland as well?
There is, but sorry. The part that makes me a little bit sad is that this ignorance is present at a high rate, even within the gay community. We would expect that. That's not to say that HIV is something that you should always relate to the gay community. Probably if you come from the 90s or whatever, you would. And I'm in a way happy that younger people don't see it this way. But to see people within the gay community, even younger people that still don't understand what's the bolts and nuts of HIV, that is 100% down to lack of education. And well, not 100%. I think there's something more as well, because as I said, I think younger people want to disassociate from this relationship. The problem is, bravo, now you are a different kind of gay person, but HIV is still around. HIV is still there. The rates of infection in Ireland are increasing. I read recently in some reports. And of course, now we have PrEP and we have medication, and we can, carry on like nothing happened. But still, the infection is there, the virus is there. And as I said, the parts that where I think work has to be done, yes, in the population as a whole, but I find it a bit shocking that the gay community, people in the gay community, a lot of people in the gay community don't understand how this works. The whole thing about PrEP. Even when they're taking it, some people don't really understand how PrEP works. I had an argument with a guy on Grindr who said to me, "Are you on PrEP?" And I was like, "I'm positive." And he said, "But you're taking PrEP." And I said, "No, you idiots, you are taking PrEP. I don't." So it's kind of a, and he was like I didn't say the word idiots, but I mean, he was insisting, and I was like, "I don't take PrEP, I take medication." And so it's this lack of education, misunderstanding within the gay community that really worries me.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that brings us to the Living Project and the role that many people involved in the project are, the work that they're doing to sort of create greater awareness, including yourself. So how did you become involved in the Living Project?
I would say it was a happy coincidence. I was living until very recently in Poland. Even though I moved to Ireland 20 years ago, and I lived here for about 15-ish years. After these 15 years, I decided to, spread the wings and go and live other places. I ended up living in Poland for almost 5 years. But then I decided to come back home, and different reasons. I wanted to set up my company. I wanted to, create a network and do a lot of things. But I also wanted to live as openly as a HIV positive person. Something that I felt I could not do in Poland for many reasons. Time does not allow us to discuss these issues, but being gay and positive in Poland is not a walk in the park. But anyhow, so I decided to come back here and live my life in this way, because I felt that hiding this information, not sharing it, not talking about it, was really making me not a happy person in many aspects of my life. including with my partners. So when I came back to Ireland, one of the first things I did was I started talking about this openly with my friends. Some of them knew that I was positive, but they had never heard me talk with more than one about the issue. So, and for some of them was a bit of a shock. For others were like, they just continued having the drink and didn't even blink. Eventually, pretty much everyone is fine. I mean, I haven't had any negative reaction from me talking about it in my circle. But then I was thinking, okay, that was cool and it's all great. But for example, I also disclosed my status in dating apps. So again, not necessarily bad reactions. Maybe one or two persons says thank you, but no thank you. And it's like cool. I haven't had any really bad reactions. Like, for example, some people tell me that they were blackmails or other positive people, and that they start talking to me because they see that I say it openly, and then they tell me that they're positive, but they don't disclose it in the profile. And I heard some horror stories. None of that has happened to me. And as all of this was happening and was happening pretty fast, so in a space of like 2 months, I came here in June. So now we are in November. That's what, 4 months, 5 months. And all of this was happening. And I follow quite a few LGBT and Irish organizations in Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth. That's when I saw the ads from HIV Ireland, which I do follow on Facebook. And they were looking for people to participate in this event and some others as well. There was the How to Tell a Secret and another one. So I ended up signing for this because I wanted to what's the correct expression? Practice what I preach. Because one thing is to go around saying, "Oh, we should be open," but yes, I live in my little box, and so I mean, it's not easy, of course, but I do push myself to do these things just to, as I said, practice what I preach. So.
Yeah, and I think your story reflects in so many ways why it is important, a project like this, living. I guess I wanted to kind of come to the end just to ask you a bit more about you and what you do in terms of your work and what you're working on at the moment outside of the Living Project.
Yeah, so for a long time, while I was in Dublin and also while I was doing in Poland, I worked as a project manager. Sorry, I need to clear my throat. I worked as a project manager in corporate transformation, and the specific kind of corporate transformation that I specialize on is you have a headquarters, and then you have, let's say, for example, subsidiaries, and then we have to transfer some activities between the subsidiaries and the headquarters to streamline and centralize and blah, 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 all these beautiful things. But it requires me to travel a lot. And for instance, when I got my job in Poland, and I was doing this in Dublin too, but in Dublin, I was focusing on European markets. And when I got the job in Poland, one of the reasons I got it, taking in consideration the large pay cuts because of the currency and the economy and whatever, was because the companies I was going to work for or with, the subsidiaries were in Africa. So, and I was traveling to, for example, Nigeria, Tanzania, South Africa, beautiful places. But I have to say, I had to travel with my medication. And in many cases, I was really, really scared because when I was going to South Africa or Nigeria, whatever, very long flights and all of that, and the companies were flying us on business. So anyway, they were actually, we were staying there for like a month and a half. So I have to take a month and a half of medication. So, and in many cases, particularly going to Nigeria, I was really scared because the levels of corruption in Nigeria are pretty high. And they just try to find, unfortunately, and this is my experience, at the airport, they just try to find something, whatever, so they can intimidate you. So you end up bribing them for just to let you go. And whatever, I didn't mind to be bribed for like €10, but I was the person representing my team and I didn't want to be exposed such a way in front of my team. So it was really stressful. It was, and nothing never happens. I was really careful. I always put the medication inside like a little box and inside a shoe, and the shoe was inside something else. So, but yes, many times I was like really afraid that this kind of stuff was going to put me in trouble. And being in Poland and hearing about the Polish society and all of this, I thought, well, if this does come to light, and the company that I, for example, got in trouble at the airport in Nigeria because I'm carrying HIV medication, I didn't even know what was going to happen. I mean, they literally cannot fire me because it would be kind of a human rights issue, but as well, it was a situation that I didn't want to test and see what would happen, but I still have to jump and do it, and I did it. Nothing bad really ever happened. And yeah, so that's what I was doing. I was working in corporate transformation for a good, I don't know, 12 years.
Mm, mm. And I suppose kind of as a final question, Eric, you actually have this very interesting experience in that, or very unique experience, certainly, in that you came to Ireland first as a Venezuelan, but you've also lived outside of Ireland and then come back to Ireland as an Irish person. So I guess if you could kind of compare and contrast those two Irelands, one you first arrived to and then the one that you recently returned to, what are the big differences? What have been the big changes in those two?
Yeah, in many ways, Ireland hasn't changed much. What I think has changed is how I see it. The Eric that I lived in the old Ireland probably was like angry, afraid, and all of these things, and I couldn't really. I spent a lot of time just angry with myself, but projecting that anger onto society and whatever. But now I came back and I was like, okay, I'm trying to face my issues. So I think I enjoy the city, the culture a little bit more, I think. Culturally, the composition of the society has changed. When I came back here, when I came here for the first time, I literally was the only gay Latino in the village. And then we got this wave where there were like a lot of Eastern Europeans coming, and there was a wave as well where there were a lot of Venezuelans and Brazilians coming. So it was beautiful because the composition of the society changed quite a lot. You know what I mean? Sometimes I walk through Dame streets and I try to pay attention to the small sounds on the streets, and I hear more foreign languages than I hear English. So that's quite interesting, and that has changed. Other things that I'm willing to explore as well is, I didn't mention this, but when I was kind of a little bit fed up with, and mind you, I was angry. I told you I wasn't really happy about myself, but I also was doing a master's degree in business management, and I specialized on human resource management. I was doing some research about biases in the hiring market. And then I came in contact with a lot of research that was showing the unfortunate reality of being non-Irish or non-Irish born, never mind foreigner, but non-Irish born in the Irish markets trying to find employment, or let me just put this better, non-Irish white born, because if you're from the States or if you're from England, it's a different story. You know what I mean? So, and I started feeling like there was a glass ceiling. Then I started like comparing that against my employment situation, and I was like, okay, yeah, I feel that I'm not really able to go beyond this point. And then that was one of the things combined that pushed me as well to leave Ireland and work elsewhere and see, what's the difference. But now that I'm back here, and again, I'm looking at the society with different glasses. But I'm willing as well to check out all of this. The difference is that now I'm not looking for work. I set up my own company. I have my own proprietary research and technology. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for funding from different organizations, primarily Enterprise Ireland's, but different entrepreneurial environments to get this idea off the ground. So it's a different situation to be looking for this kind of money than actually looking for work. But so far, majority of the people, well, actually all the people that I have spoken representing these entrepreneurial groups and these organizations and so on and so forth, they're Irish, and they are welcoming to my idea. They are welcoming to what I have to say, my request for funding. It hasn't materialized, but my point is that they are welcoming, and I don't want to compare pears with apples, but my experience so far is that it's a much better place as well.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Erik, and thank you for sharing the story. It's really fascinating, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Maurice. It was my pleasure.